There are no members of the public here in the room,
I'm not seeing that.
and I'm not seeing any on the Zoom. Jim, are you able to just unmute everyone and just confirm, to ask anyone who is?
From the, ask if there's anyone from the, I can do his.
Yeah, there we go, to the participants.
See now. They can unmute
If
themselves.
you would, allow them to unmute themselves. And then if there's any member of the public who wishes to share public comments, please unmute yourself at this point and introduce yourself. I don't see anyone, but just say, I want to make sure we're not missing anyone. Okay. So that brings us to our agenda item 3, our consent agenda. The consent agenda includes the minutes from November. It includes 2 retirements, to include our Principal Phillips, who's with us tonight in the meeting, as well as Karen Whelan. I would like to note that I've asked the superintendent to just brief us on what a principal search looks like. We did it not too long ago, but let's just cover our ground again so we know what to expect. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as published, please.
Make the motion.
Thank you, Cindy. Have a second on that, please. Thank you,
Second.
Sheila. Any discussion on the consent agenda as published? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it passes. And congratulations, Principal Phillips, on the planned retirement.
Thank you.
So we get to agenda item 4, which is finance. The treasurer's reports was posted. I would like to hear more about the Hannaford Helps Woodford Elementary donation. If
It's a small $27 check. So I think it's like just items that folks can buy, in Hannaford, and a portion of that goes to schools that they sign up for. Woodford doesn't actually have a dedicated activities account. Otherwise, this money would have gone there.
Okay.
So because there isn't an account, it has to come into the general fund. So we just need the board to accept it. Melissa doesn't necessarily have anything specific that she wants to use the money for. But again, just trying to follow, the protocol and
Okay. Thank you.
have acceptance on it.
We're happy with it.
So I would entertain a motion to approve both A and B under finance, please.
I'll make a
Tony
motion.
move.
We'll call it Cindy first and Dick second. Any discussion about accepting both sections of the finance committee report? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to policies. We have 4 policies to warn. The first is I will very briefly talk about what the changes are. The condom policy has been changed to be the sexual health barrier methods policy, and actually does not affect us because it doesn't begin until the 7th grade. But because we're part of the SU, we do need to approve it. So that's what needs to be warned there. So I would entertain a motion to warn that policy.
I'll make
So
the
moved.
motion.
We'll call that Cindy and Dick. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor of warning policy 5145, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. We also have to warn 5185, which regards anaphylaxis. Here, there was a shift in the policy to move some information down to admin regs. And it clarifies what will happen rather than what shall happen, and identifies that it's the nurse who ought to be the first trained for all that. So I would entertain a motion to warn policy 5185, please.
So
Make
move.
a motion.
I'll call that Dick and Cindy. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of warning 5185, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that passes. 6050 is the third policy we need to warn. This, among other things, removes the least restrictive environment language from the policy. So I would entertain a motion to approve 60, or it's not to approve, rather to warn 6050.
So
Make the
moved.
motion.
We'll call that Dick and Cindy. Any discussion on that?
I got a quick thing here on this one.
Please, Jeff.
So with this, I think we have to make it important that we identify child find as part of the policy in there. So, I mean, I don't know if we had to put something in there to the likes of, after the FRAP thing, is to each qualified person with a disability who is in the school district jurisdiction, because there's some private school people who can access special education through child find. So we just have to kind of make sure we identify people in the community birth through 21 who have a disability. That's the district's responsibility for the people in the jurisdiction.
Can you, Jeff, can you refer us to a line in that policy? I didn't pick up when you were.
Well, there's child find, this is kind of identifies the children within the districts, but it doesn't identify the children in the community who are not part of these school districts. So if you go to a private school under child find, which is the federal law, that they need to be identified as being in the jurisdiction of the school districts. So if somebody at Highland Law who has Down syndrome can receive services to the district through child find.
Okay.
So we have children in the community with disabilities who can be identified and supported by the SVSU.
Okay, so let's pause that for a minute. Can any of our office staff?
Kate Abbott has-
Oh, yeah, Dr. Abbott, yes, perfect, thank you.
Hi. So the Vermont state regs actually outline very specifically the child find procedures, because it is far more broad than just the students that actually live within our catchment area. So if a student comes in, say, for example, from New York and goes to a private school, the Vermont state regulations explain that the district that houses the private school, where the private school resides, say, if it's like Grace Christian or Sacred Heart, your home school, the SVSU, would still conduct the evaluation. So all of those guidelines that Mr. Leak is referring to are spelled out in the regulations. So I think that the policy is kind of our local board's perspective, but the regulations spell out what we have to do regardless, in addition to those, the local procedure.
So Dr. Abbott, do you see any, I'll call them deficiencies, but maybe that's too strong. Do you see any deficiencies in this draft policy compared to the other requirements regarding child find?
So these draft policies were created by Dina, who's our legal advisor. And I really defer to her because she is the expert with drafting policy. And she's been actually creating model policies for the state. So I defer to Dina's expertise.
Great. Jeff, what are your thoughts now? Does that
I mean,
address
that's
those?
not me. I just want to make sure that we identify that, children within the jurisdiction of the SVSU, can also access these services. So if it
Okay.
falls under the state thing, I think we can just defer to the state manual.
Great. Well, thank you for bringing it up, Jeff.
Yep.
Okay, so in that case, I would, we had a motion. That was part of our discussion. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of warning 6050, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. And lastly, we have policy 6230, which talks about curriculum-based field trips and really is recrafted to be more inclusive of students regardless of ability. And even go so far as to say that to not do a field trip because there is a student with a disability is discriminatory. And so those are the changes that were made to 6230. So I would entertain a motion to warn 6230.
Move to warn.
Second.
Well, Dick and Cindy, first and second, any discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of warning 6230, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that motion passes. Thank you very much. That brings us to number 6, principals reports. And
This evening, I asked Principal Jeff Johnson to give the report. As you remember, last month we started back with principal reports. We had Todd Phillips before we knew he was going to retire. But Jeff, as long as I don't get your retirement letter next month, I'm going to ask that you give.
I have one announcement to make tonight. No, I want to open by congratulating my colleague Todd Phillips on a well-earned retirement. I wish him the best, and I'll definitely miss him. He's been a big help as I transitioned to this job several years ago. So congratulations, Todd. Thanks to the board for having me tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone. I just want to update on a few initiatives, a few activities we've had here at the school this fall, and I want to end with a couple of thank yous. First off, I want to share that our teachers, K-6, have been working extensively with the Hill for Literacy this fall, working on implementation, reading instruction, progress monitoring student data, monthly meetings with the consultants to the Hill, and it's already been a positive impact, but it's very extensive work we're doing around literacy, which has been a positive thing for our students and our teachers. So I wanted to update the board on that. Also, our school leadership team continues to work with Kathleen Lang and the University of Kansas around our multi-tiered system of supports around academics, social emotional behavior, just like every other school in the district. Staff recently completed our first assessment benchmarking, and we took the opportunity to look at that data, identify students in need, and place some interventions in place that we're going to monitor throughout the trimester and the school year. We have goals around that progress monitoring, so we can track and see what interventions are working well and what we need to adjust as we move forward. And some recent events. So I want to highlight a couple of things that have happened. We had our PTO holiday shop last week. Obviously we didn't have that last year with the pandemic, but students all week long got a chance to go up and do a little shopping for families for the holidays. I want to thank our PTO president, Liz Duffy, as well as Linda Poole, who organized and ran the event. We also had several family volunteers come in and help kids shop and wrap presents. It was a big buzz throughout the week. So I want to thank everybody in the PTO for that. We also had our virtual band and chorus concert Monday. So again, with the pandemic, our wonderful music teacher, Mrs. Green, decided to do a virtual event. So she recorded both concerts and is going to share them with our families. Kids sounded great. They were very excited to get back in front of, it wasn't a crowd. They were pretty excited to get back together and do a performance. They've been working really hard over the fall, getting ready for that. So thank you, Ms. Green, for all that hard work, and nice job, kiddos. You sounded great the other day. And then a few thank yous. First, I want to thank the board specifically for the addition of our assistant principal that here and at Pownell as well. We share Sarah Case. She has had an immediate impact. I'm not going to speak for Pownell, but for Shasberry, she's had an immediate impact working with teachers on curriculum and instruction on a regular basis. I don't know what I did without her for all these years. So I want to thank the board for that support and adding that position last year. It's definitely been a positive for us. I also want to thank the families, the kiddos, for their patience and understanding. We're still in a challenging time, but I've heard firsthand, a number of parents have come to me during pickup time or drop off. They thank us. They tell me thank the teachers. I know they're working hard. They think we're doing a great job. They know we're looking out for their students. But I want to thank them because it has been tough, in and out of quarantine and sending kids home and here and that, but they've been very understanding and patient through that. I want to thank the staff. It's been a tough year, as we all know, but they have continually stepped up over and over again, making my job easier. And I want to thank them for that. And I'm looking forward to wishing them well and a good holiday vacation coming up when they get away for a little while. I also specifically want to thank our nurse, Mary Hardman. She's worked tirelessly, keeping us safe and informed throughout this. And there's a lot of work on our nurses right now with this pandemic, and I want to make sure I highlight all the work that she's doing. It's really, again, don't know what we would do without her in that chair. So I want to thank her for that. I want to thank the central office staff throughout this pandemic as well. They've been super supportive. Every department have been nothing but support for us at Shasberry. So I want to thank them. And lastly, I want to thank the board for their support. You continually seem to look out for our students and our families and do what's best for them. The discussion we had during the budget meeting tonight showed that. So I want to thank you for that as well. And just wish everybody a happy holidays.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Principal Johnson? Great. Well, thank you very much.
I would just like to add to Jeff's comments about Sarah Case. She's been a wonderful addition to our school as well. Again, just like Jeff said, I don't know what we've done without her. She's included in daily PLCs when she's within our building, so she meets with every grade level. She's spot on with the things that she's looking for within instruction, assessment, data collection. So I want to thank the board for their support. And thank you, Jeff, for those kind words.
Congratulations, Todd.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks. All right, before we move to the next agenda item, Superintendent Culkin, would you mind checking what the chat is? I just want to make sure we haven't
For
missed.
security purposes down, meaning we turn the chat off now. So there was only one that came from the budget meeting, but we
Okay.
don't, once we go off of public comment, I thought I turned it off, but. So.
Well, I see that it's not someone from the public wanting to make a comment. I just want to make sure we
Right,
weren't
so
missing
it
someone.
says the chat is off, so I don't know how Kate Abbott was able to sneak that in there. Yeah, so that's been the practice we've been doing once we end public comment.
Thank you. All right, well, the stage is yours anyhow, for the superintendent report.
Good evening, everyone. Superintendent is becoming a learned man by making other people give my report, so. But I do have some things I want to say. This board this evening, you're the first board to hear what I'm calling episode 1 of a 3-part series on the SVSU recovery plan. Tonight, we're going to feature the COVID recovery is going to focus more on social emotional learning, what you see in the agenda, mental health, well-being. The 2 other parts that will come at future meetings is engagement and truancy, and then academic achievement. And I encourage you to, I think there's phenomenal information on our website. When you get some free time, take some time and look and see what's been put there about how our recovery plan is going. And Laura and I approved today when we were meeting with Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment, Melissa Senecal, the updates to our recovery plan that will be going on here that will show some of the progress updates that we've made. So that as soon as Melissa is able to get together with Katie West, but hopefully by the end of this week, those updates will be on our website as we make progress through recovery. Why this is an important topic for us to talk about this evening, I think any of the principals could tell, I hear from all the principals how difficult this year has been. I hear it in my monthly meetings with the union. I hear it in discussions with parents. I've had this discussion with some board members from feedback that you've got. When we all went home in June of 2021, I think we had a big sigh of relief and thought so much of this was behind us. The trauma that our students have experienced during this now 3rd school year impacted by COVID, I think has particularly affected our younger students. And we will have data to support that at a future meeting. We don't have, we don't believe that our Svuesd data is completely had a long enough window to give accurate data for that. So that will come at one of the future meetings where I'm labeling this a 3-part series. And but we do have some data to share with you this evening about how our recovery is going, but there'll be more to come. And it is also what you're going to hear tonight. Like I said, this is going to be repeated, maybe refined based as we get your feedback, repeated at the SU meeting next Tuesday night, and then at the next SU meeting, at the next MAU meeting, we'll make a presentation on this same topic there. And our newsletter that will be coming out Friday, this is also the feature of our newsletter to families and to staff. It's it dominates so much of the work that we're doing right now. And if we, and many of you have said the same thing, if we can't help our students in these areas, social emotional health, it makes the academic achievement that much more challenging. So it's a priority with us. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Laura Boudreau, and she has some of her team here also present. So thank you, Laura.
Thanks, everyone. I'm glad to be here tonight and give you some information. So I am one of the co-chairs of the SVSU recovery team with my partner, Melissa Senecal, who is the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. Kay Abbott is here tonight as well, Interim Director of Student Support Services. I know Megan Mescat is there as well, who's our Interim Director of Early Ed. And I want to pause for a moment because Jessa Ordway, wave Jessa Ordway.
We weren't sure what's going to be able to be here, so thank you for joining
That's why I
us.
wanted.
Hi, everyone. I'm in between carting kids to practice, so I'm here for a little bit.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
I wanted to take a moment and pause on Jessa. So Jessa, just to give you a little bit of perspective, I think Jessa, is this year 4? Is this year 4, Jessa?
I think so.
Yeah, so Jessa is one of our, and this is going to give you a little bit of perspective when we start to look at staffing patterns based on the need we're seeing in our community. Jessa is one of the first grant funded, she's funded out of Title IV. She is our SVSU behavior and social emotional coach. She's one of the first people we've had in this particular role. Her work is amazing. She started as one person. She now has teams that she helps to support. And so I wanted you to be able to see her because she's been such an incredible resource to our team. So Jess, I'm glad you could pop in for a few minutes because she's another key person behind this great work. So can I share my screen? Do I have? Yes.
Yeah, I made you
Good?
co-host.
Okay.
You should be good.
Great. So what we're
Kate's
gonna.
co-host and I didn't make co-host was Jess. I don't know.
Okay, no, Jess will be.
Okay.
So in a moment, I'm going to share my screen because we have a few pieces of information that we visually want to share with you, and we're going to give you some information, and then at the end we're going to stop and we're going to ask us questions, if that would be okay. So here we go. I always have share my screen anxiety, and here it comes. Okay. Yay. Everyone can see my screen? Okay. So we are going to start with the first pillar of recovery, which is social emotional health and well-being. And that has been the focus of the start of the year. We have been returning students to school, and it's been, again, as Superintendent Colquhoun referenced, we've been supporting students as we meet their needs, and every student's need is very different. We have kids that have walked in our door that are ready to learn, and we've had kids that have walked in our door that have suffered. It's been a traumatic, we've been through a pandemic. So we want to start with, that's our focus this time around, and we want to start with our acronyms right up front. So you might hear us reference ESSER, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. That's a grant money that we have access to. MTSS is our multi-tiered systems of support that every school, all 6 elementary schools have a multi-tiered system of support, as does the district, that outlines how we provide services. Continuous improvement plan is the state required plan that every school is required to have, and we do as the district as well. Tonight, you're going to hear SRSSIE. That's the Student Risk Screening Scale for internalizing and externalizing. PBIS references Positive Behavior Intervention Supports. That is the Tier 1 Tier 1 instructional resource we use to help with behavior in all of our schools. And there was a reference made to Svuesd, which is a school-wide information system that we can track behavior. And again, as we're just getting started as a result of the pandemic, we're looking forward, as we said earlier, to a bigger data dive later in the year. So right up front, those are our acronyms that you'll hear us share.
So the SVSU recovery and elementary school part of recovery, which is also very much linked to our elementary and secondary school emergency relief, the use of ESSER, has been focused on what we've already had in place. So again, every school has a multi-tiered system of support, and we have a focus in that tiered system on behavior and social emotional learning. We also have a continuous improvement plan, goal number 2, which is safe and healthy schools. And our goal is, as a district, to see a decrease in high to moderate behaviors. And then, so we have plans in place. We have our multi-tiered system of support, and then we also have our district continuous improvement plan that's linked to this area. And then, as a result of the pandemic, we were asked to make a recovery plan, which we know is a multi-year plan. It's going to take years to recover from this period of time. And so the recovery plan is the ask was to actually add to our goals, to be really thoughtful about what are we seeing as a result of this period of time, and how can we react and create updated goals. So all of this information can be found on our website, and I'm going to click on the link and let's see if it works. If not, we might just have to take a pause because I just wanted to show it to you. Oh, yay, it worked. Okay, can everyone, so this is the SVSU ESSER and Grants Recovery Plan, which everybody can find on our website. And here you can go in and look at what the recovery.
Bigger.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Pause. There we go.
Yeah.
How's that? Look at that. Okay. So when you visit this site, you'll notice on the right-hand side, there's a toolbar. And on the toolbar, you can really take a deeper dive into the process. We were required to try to gather data that just focuses on last year. Again, we've been asked not to be doing comparisons right now because there's just too many variables. So one piece of data right now is we can't compare to another piece of data. So really this fall is where we're starting. But you can look at the needs assessment data. You can look at the plan, and when you click on these links, you can take a deeper dive into our plan. And then there's also always an acronym dictionary and a place you can give us feedback. And we check that weekly. So anyone can look at the plan. If you tonight hear this and you want to provide feedback, you can go to this link and it will lead you to a place where you can give feedback. Now let me get back to, I might have to stop sharing just for a moment. Hold on. This is where here we go. Going back to here. Share my screen. There we go. Okay. So we also want to remind you that in the area of behavior and social emotional learning, we have standards that we teach to. So our state guides us by providing us with standards to follow in every area, and that includes behavior and social emotional learning. We have the transferable skills, the Vermont transferable skills, which are listed here. And there's also a link under the curriculum tab on the website that you can learn more. So the next thing that you do after you have this foundation is we wanted to give you a little snapshot, because our focus again at the beginning of the year has been on behavior and social emotional learning. So we have been able to capture a little snapshot of data that we are going to revisit again. And it comes from our student risk screening scale for internalizing and externalizing. So an example of, and this screener is given 3 times a year. So this is our baseline, what you're going to see. It is used 3 times a year to measure internalizing and externalizing risk. So that's the language I'm going to share in just a minute. And if Jess is, she's smiling, so I must be doing okay. So internalizing, an example would be, because this screener is filled out by teachers, which is why we're feeling confident right now in this moment, sharing this piece of data. Internalizing is an example would be, we're witnessing anxious or lonely behavior. Jessa, how was that? Thumbs up. Okay, good. And an example of externalizing behavior would be if we're witnessing problems with peers and aggressive behavior. So that's the basic difference between internalizing or externalizing. So this first data snapshot is for internalizing. This is for all of our elementary, our SVUASD schools, all 6 of them. And I'm going to read you. So green is considered low risk. And that's at low risk right now for our student population for internalizing is 54%. Moderate risk is at 20% and high risk is at 26%. Okay. So that's for internalizing. And again, those examples were anxious and lonely if we're witnessing those behaviors. Now I'm going to show you externalizing at the elementary level. So externalizing, 62% of the elementary population is at low risk, 24% is at moderate risk, and 14% is at high risk. So you can kind of get a sense of what internalizing and externalizing looks for our elementary student population. Another piece of data that we are confident in sharing right now is, so I am the homeless liaison for the SVSU. And so I'm responsible for doing intakes when a family, in this case, I'll say at the elementary level, a family reaches out and asks for support. And then we do an intake that falls under the guidelines of McKinney-Vento. And so you can see that last year, between school year 2021, between August and June, at the pre-K elementary level, I did 18 intakes. And those are people that qualified for the status of homelessness under McKinney-Vento. This school year, 21-22, August to right now, I've already done 26 intakes. Okay. So I just want you to have a sense
In
of
half
what
the
that,
time.
in half the time. I just want you to have a sense of that. So that's how many intakes I've done right now. Okay. So we have these pieces of data, and then that's one piece of information we want to give you a little bit of a snapshot, because again, that's been our focus at the beginning of the year as we bring students back into the buildings. So then we also want to take a look at, you know, we have access to funding, we have local funding, we have grant money that we have access to. And so we wanted to give you a snapshot of, so what does instruction look like? So tier 1 means that what do all students receive for behavior and social emotional learning? And so we've kind of divided it up by spans, and this is where I'm going to have a couple people help me out here. So under behavior, universally, positive behavior intervention supports are the expectations that you see in all of your buildings, and then school teams come up with lessons. What is it? Lessons for how do I be responsible? And so students receive good first instruction in how to do that. And we use positive behavior intervention supports as our guide. Under social emotional, we have a primary resource called Second Step. I want to point out that there's a note there that says we were able to purchase the resources using our Title IV grant money. So all of our elementary schools received the tool or the material they needed to support instruction through the Title IV grant. And this resource is where teachers and counselors can use this tool to teach social emotional learning lessons. And then zones of regulation. Jessa, if you don't mind, I'm going to defer to you for a minute. You want to go for a minute?
Sure. So this is kind of more of like a secondary resource that's made available in our schools to kind of support social emotional regulation. So really the goal of zones is to help students gain skills in emotional and sensory regulation, which in turn kind of leads to more positive increases in self-control and problem-solving abilities. The nice thing is it really meets kids kind of where they're at and is adapted so that you can kind of work to build like classroom skills, but also tailor it to individual students. And it also gives staff a common language to kind of approach kids so that we can start to really work on teaching them the skills to identify emotions in a way that kind of makes sense and has a universal language when we're approaching students.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessa.
Sure.
We are able to purchase the professional learning that teachers need to implement this, and then also the materials using our ESSER money. And then we also want to point out that we do have for health and wellness, we do have a local health curriculum and a team with representatives from the elementary schools. And they, remember, the state adopts standards, and that's what we teach to. So every school in Vermont teaches to these standards. And we are able to fund the materials and any training through the local Mellon grant that addresses food insecurities. And we're focused on nutrition with the money we receive. Medicaid money, which is preventative, which we can use for the Family Fitness Fest, which some of you have seen before and we've shared about. And then we've also used ESSER money. And then the physical education, we learned through recovery and through the pandemic that families and staff and our students wanted to see more movement. And so our phys ed teachers have really helped to make sure that their curriculum, which is based on Vermont standards, because every school in Vermont teaches to the same standards, and the standards are listed there. But then we've also been able to support with resources and training. For example, all the elementary schools want to teach there's a golf program that can be done on site that every kid can be a part of. That's just something different. That's a life skill that kids can learn. Yoga for kids, mindfulness. So we're just embarking on training. And so the physical education teachers have been super helpful in supporting this. So we have instructional guides, we have curriculums and resources to support, and we've been able to use some of our grant funding to support this work. And then we have to make sure that teachers and staff have the professional learning they need to implement. So we know that we are dealing with a great deal of trauma. And so we continue on a rotating basis to offer a trauma 1 class. And then every 2 years we offer a trauma 2 class. We've been able to continue to fund this activity for teachers through, and even college credit through the ESSER money right now. We also have a trauma cohort. So Jessa helps to facilitate a group. We have someone in every building that's gone through trauma 1 that then becomes a resource for their principal and their leadership team. So when they're trying to help a child that's having is in some kind of situation, often they'll call on this person as a resource. So we're trying to build our own inner capacity. And so then the person that's doing the trainings helps this group. We are fostering restorative practices. We are using our ESSER funds for that as well. We have John Kidda who comes. Jessa, he's twice a year. He's doing circling trainings now, correct?
Yeah, so that's offered to all staff, and then he also is available as a coach to each building. Typically, that's done through their leadership team to kind of really, explore where they're at with restorative practices and moving that forward as well.
Thank you for that. And nonviolent crisis intervention training, which is CPI, that's de-escalation. How can we, when we have had a child that's escalated, how do we help them de-escalate? And so this past year with our grant money, we have a district trainer, but then now the request was we need to have a trainer in every building. And so we spent last summer training someone from every building in these techniques to be a resource for the leadership team. So a principal, really, we're building this bank of resources to help support the students that we're helping out. And then again, you can see the zones of regulation. And Jessa, that again, we've been trying to offer twice a year, correct? Yeah. Okay, great. And then Jessa really helps to manage a lot of this. She's really in touch with the trainers, and she acts as a liaison for much of this work. And so then we really wanted to give you a snapshot of the staffing patterns focused on behavior and social emotional learning. And
Can you
so
make that a
I'm,
little bigger?
I'll make it bigger. Yes, I will make it bigger.
This is what they were asking. This is what you were asking about earlier.
How's that? Okay, good. Okay, thank you. So right now we're looking at Bennington Elementary School. So you can see we have a school-based clinician, a counselor. We have 2 nurses. One is a contracted service. You can see that social worker we talked about, which is a part-time right now in this moment, a part-time, and where they shared that they can see the need where that could they could use this person, this role as a full-time in both. We have 2 behavior interventionists. Jessica, can you do me a favor? And again, because I know this used to be a previous role, can you just give me a little snippet, or can you explain to the board what would a behavior interventionist do in their role?
Sure. So they're really there to kind of help implement, behavior supports at all levels, really. We are, as you can see, adding board certified behavior analysts that we're really looking to, to support some of that more intensive behavior support work. But they work alongside, staff and teachers and students to kind of implement some of those behavior interventions and supports that are outlined in MTSS manuals.
Thank you, Jessa. And Kate, do you want to give a little bit more of an update about where we were with board certified behavior analysts and a little bit of a deeper dive?
Sure, like your board certified behavior analysts are like your clinical level behaviorists. They last year we had for the first time 1 in our district for the on-point intervention, and that position is so valuable right now because they can help guide multiple schools and multiple teams of folks to help lay eyes on a challenging behavior, talk about what the function of that behavior might be and how to intervene in a way that teaches the child alternative coping mechanisms or alternative communication strategies. So we started just with 1 district-wide behaviorist last year, and now we currently have 1 at the high school, through 1 at the middle school, and 1 at the elementary, and then 1 with our intervention program. So they've been extremely, extremely helpful.
Thanks, Kate. So you can see again that you can see that some of these positions are funded right now currently through using our recovery money. The art therapist is also a new role that was a request of the recovery team in the spring based on data. And we knew we were going to see need. So we've hired 1, and she right now is she's a district employee. She's piloting, doing a small pilot at 3, almost 4. She's doing some wonderful, I've heard about some wonderful small group work at Bennell, and then some more one-to-one counseling, and looking forward to growing and being able to help.
Our other
support
principals would
schools.
love to.
She is, yes, they're waiting for when, but again, we've never had this before, so it's super important that we take the time to build the infrastructure we need, but we know we have need. And then I know we have both Kate and Elizabeth here. Do either one of you want to just give a little snippet about the pilot K1 alternative? Either one of you, Kate or Elizabeth?
Sure. I don't want to steal Elizabeth's fire, but so
I don't have a voice, Kate, so I'll let you do it. But we're having a lot of success, and I can say that when they were talking about data, some of our kiddos with the highest amount of Svuesd referrals have had hardly any since they started doing this program.
And I want to second then. And Elizabeth has done a fantastic job in just trying to manage the startup, the very fast startup, and managing of the resources in and out of this alternative classroom. So we had a number of kindergartners come in that either hadn't had pre-K experience because of COVID or hadn't had enough. And they really came into school unprepared for, and also having experienced some other challenges and barriers in their lives. So the alternative kindergarten classroom has allowed them to have an alternative setting where they have art therapy, play therapy, a motor group, a BCBA supporting, teaching kids how to engage in that more functional, appropriate social behavior, so that children can return longer portions of the day in the regular kindergarten program and meet the demands safely. So we've been partnered with Myers-Prouty Center that have been providing us early childhood professionals that have helped us make this lift happen at Bennington Elementary. And we're so thankful that we have such great community partnerships, as well as our UCS partners who have been supporting with the mental health component as well.
Thanks, Kate. And I do want to clarify, there is typically on budget one nurse at Bennell. There's been another one supporting. So just to clarify that, there is one full-time nurse, but we have found another contracted service provider that's helping out when we've had some.
We've had some staffing issues there.
Yes. So
There really is only one nurse there, because the request is to add the second nurse in the budget there. So
thanks for that. So then if I look at, again, going down through, you can see a similar pattern at Molly Stark with a clinician. Again, you're seeing a contracted service, 2 school counselors, positions for a nurse and an LPN, the similar pattern. And then you'll notice something that says pilot to pre-K, K, behavior and social emotional coaches. That again is another pilot. It came out of the recovery plan. And what does it look like to have a coach that specializes in that pre-K transition period where we've seen some, definitely seen some behavior where we're in social emotional needs. So having 2 coaches that are there, and again, we're building infrastructure. So it's working to see what that will look like. And those are grant funded positions. If you move down to Monument and Pownell, again, you're going to see similar positions. You'll see something called a trauma therapist. That's again an outside contract. That's Title IV money. We have some schools that are accessing some of the Title IV money that's allocated to them for this very reason. And then again, you're seeing the art therapist again as we move down. The roles at Pownell again are school counselor, school community liaison, and support services coordinator. Maybe different titles, but similar roles in networking with the community, providing behavior support, and really a team approach. I continue to move down to Shasberry. We have the school the school social worker, counselor, nurse. Again, you'll see the title grant funded position, the behavior interventionist, and the art therapist. Woodford Hollow, these roles are assigned as an as needed basis. And so that would be a request. And then that's at the district level. That's what we do is we come together when there's a need and we look at, because I'm going to go down here to our additional level supports. We have a bank of, again, people that can help to support when we see needs in our different schools. On the On Point Elementary intervention houses 2 school-placed clinicians and also a board certified behavior analyst, because that is meant to be a therapeutic intervention where we're addressing social emotional needs. And so again, our goal tonight was to give you a sense of some of the roles in the district, and to also give you a sense of how we're using our what does it look like to use our grant money to support the social emotional needs we're seeing. So if I bring it back, part of the recovery plan is to focus on the first focus, and it was the way that it was rolled out to us, is to focus on and build that foundation first, that good social emotional health and well-being, and then all the other pieces are going to start to fall in place. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to see if anyone has any questions.
I do.
Yeah.
How many homeless kids do we have in our schools? And they must be harder to work with because they don't have a solid home to go to.
So that's a great question. So the reason that, so the homeless number is a constantly moving number, which is why we shared with you the intake number, because I can give you a definite answer, like how many intakes that I've done. So our homeless population has grown just based on the intake numbers that you see there. And so I guess I could, so when you're supporting a homeless family, you're or anyone that's experiencing struggles with housing, the first thing that we try to connect them to community resources, and then our responsibility is to make sure that they have everything they need to be ready for school. So I work with my peers. We actually, and I kind of glazed over this, we have 2 family engagement specialists at the elementary level that were hired because of ESSER. They have been amazing because they actually can go into the home and do home visits and work with families and work with what do you need in this moment and how can I get you to school. We're using them also to help with engagement with school. They're basically able to be diagnostic and help each family kind of meet them where they're at. It's not an exact answer. I think the best data we have to go off right now is our intake number, but just to know that every family that's experiencing homeless, it's different for each family. The
But
needs that they need.
they are certainly experiencing trauma, and we all know that impacts their schooling too. Or sometimes that attending school is their least worry. It's where they're going to put their head tonight, and so Laura and our family engagement specialists have really upped it this year, and actually that's what the amount Laura has a little shopping crew together that we do purchases for homeless families with funds that we have for that, and there's no question we haven't seen an increase in that, and that's why we wanted you to see that. It's an unbelievably telling data that it's in less than half of a school year that the numbers are twice what we were seeing before. So definitely an impact. But one thing to say, and I'm not even going to try to say the acronym, I'm going to say the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. So how's that? Those funds aren't forever. And a lot of these positions that we're putting in, because of what we deal with as a supervisory union, we're going to have some hard decisions going forward about whether we build these positions into the budget when the funds are no longer available. Because it's yes, there are some positions that are specifically targeting recovery, and hopefully that then once we've leveled the playing field from the damage that recovery did, if possible, then in theory we don't need those positions, but I don't really believe it. So the board should be, it's great that we have these funds. And actually, we had a legislative breakfast this morning. We said the same thing to our legislators that were present, that thank you for these funds. This is great, but it's going to have an impact when it goes away. Apparently, keeps our budget chief a little trauma herself thinking of that. So what that impact would be.
So a question about the SRSSIE.
Correct. Yeah.
Is there a way to gauge the students that are presenting with both types of risk? So to paint a picture of like the most at-risk child with regard to the I and the E?
Yeah, so could you see both internalizing and externalizing with one child? Like,
Sure.
yeah, so you can be so I would say this, this tool can be used at a really diagnostic level, and that's the ultimate goal. Is you use the screener, and it does both.
Yeah, okay.
And if if a child is presenting both, then going back to what Jessica said, a school, it could start with a grade level team and some of these social emotional experts sitting together and looking at a school's multi-tiered system of support to say, what are the interventions that we have? And I think Jessica did a great job of highlighting some of those at the beginning. the tools that we have. And that's why we try to stay focused on the one we've chosen to do them right, do them well, so that they will work. So you can triage based on the data you see. But yes, you could have a child presenting both.
And so is there a way to then to use the assessment tool to figure out, to create sort of a composite of the children, the students with the highest level of need in both of those categories too? I mean, I like your use of the term triage, like truly and diagnostic too, for that matter. So it's to diagnose, to find the students who are struggling most through this tool,
Yeah.
and then use targeted interventions with that group.
Yes.
Okay, because I would imagine
Yes.
that for those students who are at most risk for externalizing behavior, that at least has the capacity to increase the number of students with internalizing risk. If you have a kid who, is regularly violent in class, that's probably going to increase the level of anxiety in the other students in that class, so that so things sort of continue to cascade
The witness.
more and more out of control. Yeah.
Yeah, I think these, I can defer to Kate. I don't know if you want to add anything there. I think Jessa might have left us, but exactly what you're describing is when you are able to pull a group of experts that this is their specialty, and if someone came to the table and raised that question, here's what I'm seeing, they can have this really great conversation to make a plan for not only the student, but you're right, when you have, because students live in a classroom, they live in a room together. And so you're right that you want to be thoughtful about how you're responding, so that all needs are being met based on what's happening. Kate?
Yeah, I was just going to say to your point, the SSRS-IE is such a great tool because the children with externalizing behaviors kind of announce themselves are easy to find. But without that SSRS-IE, we cannot find those internalizers and intervene. So that's such important data that Jessa shared with us, to make sure that our counselors have eyes on those learners, to make sure that they're getting support too, because they're quiet and they don't announce themselves quite like the externalizing students.
Any other questions on that before I move to the rest of my report? Thank you. Thank you for a great presentation, Laura, and to your team. Thank you for the work that you're doing for our district and our students. And I just want to repeat that, the next part of this series will be engagement and truancy, and then we will then move on to academic achievement and hopefully have the data that so many are asking for. He's still here, good. So I also want to thank Todd Phillips. Todd, you may not know this, but you've been the recipient of a running pool for the past 2 years, speculating that by the deadline of January 6th that we would have Todd's letter that he was leaving, and I lost. You stayed longer than I thought you were, and I am so grateful that you did. And I know you still got half a year with us, but this is an opportunity for me to take to thank you. I think personally, I think you're a phenomenal principal and have done a wonderful job in Pownell, and you will be missed. So, and we're going to use you for every minute that you have left. So thank you.
Appreciate that. And thank you so much. Other board members that might not know this, after my first year, I was going to move to Colorado and stayed on, and I'm been with the district for 10 years. And the new team from, I think it was year 2 or 3, phenomenal job, and keep up working with our students and the district. It's been a wonderful experience the last 7 years. So thank you. I don't want to tear up.
All right, I still have other opportunities to make you do that.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Yeah. So that segues into a question that our chair had. How do we replace such an outstanding principal? We have a process where we will set a screen. Now that it's official that you have his letter, Nick Galt will be posting for that position. I think is Nick gone. And that will get posted on School Spring, and then we will form a screening committee. I will ask the chair to select a couple of board members to be on that screening committee. We'll have some teachers on that and some, probably another principal, and then a central office administrator who will screen the candidates, do the first round of interviews. The screening committee does the initial interview and then turns over those candidates. The second, when we have a finalist or finalists, then that interview is with a team of administrators at central office on a more targeted conversation about education philosophy and the job of being a principal, and to see how well they fit into the team. So the time is, this is the time of year, once we get over the first of the year, that's the traditional time that you start seeing principal openings. So we'll be aggressive about advertising for that, and then getting that process filled. So once we have that, I will be asking the chairperson to give me 2 names to serve on that screening committee. You know, you heard a lot tonight about social emotional well-being, mental health. As superintendent, I am also concerned about that of our staff. All of us have been through times that no one expected, no one planned for, no one really trained for. So on the 22nd, some of you may have heard me say this at the SU meeting last month, on the 22nd of December, next Wednesday, school ends for our students, our teachers and paraprofessionals go home, but typically our custodians and office staff and administrators will remain in the building. So we are scheduling a shutdown of all the offices and schools at the SVSU for the period from the 22nd until so the 22nd will be the last day, and then return on January 3rd. And it's my hope that, and some of these people, think of our custodial and maintenance staff who have, when everyone else was working remotely, they were still in our buildings, and many of our office staff was still manning buildings. So staffing, sorry, I shouldn't use that term, staffing buildings. Laura and I, we meet with Dave Melnick, you've heard that name, and Dave talks about brain recovery, and that he advocates for an 11-day period that you would rest your brain and recover. We're not out of this yet. We have a long way to go. So I want a staff that is as rested as possible. And I mean mentally. That's really where the toll that I think it's taking on so many of us. I hope our principals stay off their email. And why am I saying this publicly? I want people to understand that, you know, we all have emergency contact information, and true emergencies we know how to find. Every building is having a plan. You know, we still may get a snowstorm and plowing may have to take place. There still has to be building checks to make sure that pipes aren't rupturing, but we are committed to getting as many people to stand down as possible. And that includes the people that I work with who I need them, we need them to continue the second half of the year. So this break is so important. And I hope that I hope all of you get to have some time that you can rest your brain and do something other than electronic world that we've all been in. So any questions I could answer for you, I wouldn't ask them.
You've earned some time.
Say that again.
You've earned some time.
Well, thank you. I could not do it without the people that I work with. They all have earned the time, and I know it's a little different for Renee because she's in the middle of budget season, but I hope that she will we'll get her a brain break maybe after.
Yeah, February is fine.
66 days.
Who's counting though, right? Yeah. February vacation is for her, so, okay, so.
Just the floor meeting.
Oh, that's on my agenda, yep. So our floor meeting is 2/28, February 28th will be the floor meeting. There is a question about location. The town clerk was under the impression that we're gonna rotate floor meetings when we became a, sorry about that. Reminding me to take medication, but that's welcome to getting old. We would prefer, we have that night, we're gonna have the SU meeting, floor meeting, and the MAU meeting, which will be at the Bennington Fire Station. So I can't remember if this board, when it became a merged board, did it say it was gonna rotate floor meetings, or is it all right to go ahead and schedule the floor meeting at the Bennington Fire Station? What is the wish of the committee?
I think we would need to go back and check the minutes.
Yeah.
For when we, just after we formed,
Yeah.
because I don't recall.
I don't know, but the town clerk needs a decision.
Yeah, well, it was one of the clerks in one of the outlying towns wanted to make sure she's got it correct. I mean, it's going to be in our warning,
Right.
but I don't know if she's doing something ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I think they're just trying to plan.
Yeah.
We can all drive or hitchhike.
Is there gonna be an online option for the outlier towns?
The last word I heard from the state is there's always electronic version, like people always have the ability to call into a meeting,
Mhm.
but none of those locations have the setup that we have in this room
Yeah.
that would allow Zooming. I know that the state has said that they can't be all virtual meetings like there were last year. There has to be a physical meeting. So it would not be an opportunity to Zoom into a meeting at any location other than here, but then that doesn't, if you remember what happened before, like there's 4 floor meetings that night, because there's also Southwest Tech, and they're staggered, 15 minutes apart. So moving to a different location will put, I have to shift resources to cover different meetings, like I'll be at one, Renee might be not at the other one. So we can do whatever the wish of the board is, but.
I would say whatever makes it easier.
To maximize participation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Second,
think 2 years ago, we did the firehouse in Bennington. It worked out good.
Yeah.
Well, if the board agrees, again, our recommendation would be to keep it there just for simplicity and for where the most of our administrators will be that day.
I mean, I'm okay with Bennington. It's just,
Sounds
it'd be
good to
nice
me.
if we could zoom in if they needed to.
Yeah. So let me just ask, this is not necessarily a binding question, but are there any board members who would object to us having the floor meeting at the firehouse where the rest of the staff will be, and for all the reasons we just discussed?
We should all go to Woodford.
But unannounced, we should just drop in. We should just show up. Okay, but I think, not hearing any objections from the board members, I think the floor meeting at the firehouse does make the most sense.
Be easier on you.
Thank you. I'm sure you're grateful.
And run from one to the other.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions for our superintendent? Okay. So this brings us to the chair report, which will be brief. I'll just start, as I typically do, just extending our thanks to everyone associated with our schools for continuing just week after week after week to deal with demands that no one could have ever really expected, and to continue to do so with such grace and dedication. We're all very, very fortunate to have such dedicated folks at helming everything. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
As we discussed during the budget meeting, I would like to form an ad hoc committee to discuss the school resource officers. So I will form that right now, and over the next day or so, What I'd like is to have 3, no more than 4 people on that committee. And I envision that committee meeting with stakeholders, such as our building principals who have active SROs now, the equity committee, and anyone else who has anything to share. So if anyone has a desire to serve on that committee, please let me know and we'll get that rolling. What I'd like to do ideally is to meet, is to start gathering some of that information next week prior to everyone going on vacation. So we'd be looking at probably the 20th or the 21st for, a Zoom meeting, not necessarily a face-to-face meeting. And I would also like to form an ad hoc committee examining our building needs. We had some discussion about that last month. Scott made some excellent points, both during and after the meeting. Was unable, I did not pull it together in the way that I had hoped to, but let's start that work now. And again, with that, that will be a big job. So I would like 4 people on there, but we can't have more than 4 people due to quorum issues. So
And
again,
me.
thank you, Dick.
And I did find in my office 3 previous building studies
Okay.
from, but mostly focused on the Bennington schools.
Okay.
At some point before me, they hired an architectural firm to do an assessment of all the buildings, which is, I think, what we're probably going to go to, but it would expand to all 6 buildings.
I'd like to do that as well.
Thank you.
The other thing that committee could look at is, what are you gonna do with this building?
Yep.
Because you own this building, if the supervisory union does move to another location, then what are the options for this?
Mhm.
So that would be another role that they could be part of that study.
All right, so of those 2 committees, yeah, folks could let me know, please, in the next day or so, if you want to participate on either one of those. And Superintendent Kulke, I typically go through you to schedule any kind of times with any of your staff. Would you mind pointing the diversity and equity committee my way, please?
So,
And with your permission, can I reach out to principals Phillips and Johnson about their experiences?
Yeah.
Thanks.
And it's Jonathan Phipps, who the SVSU equity coordinator, who may be listening tonight, but you could, I'll send you emails, addresses.
Okay, that brings us over to some FYIs with the student enrollment data, which was posted, the budget status report, which I don't know if I saw was posted, and then a few changes to admin regs to some policies, 5030, 5100, and 5140. So with our agenda exhausted, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make a
So
motion.
move.
We have
Second.
Susan first, Dick second. Any discussion on adjourning the meeting? Hearing none. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes.